Capcom's IE engine, which I like to pretend stands for Resident Evil engine and not Reach for the Moon engine, very obvious because the hand is reaching for the moon and not a zombie, is great. It's easily among the best game engines on the current market and probably my favorite as well. I like it even better than Epic's Unreal engine, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of you have the same opinion, because it's really that good. But why is that? Well, you don't have to wonder any longer. Here's what makes Capcom's IE engine so good. By the way, I will mostly talk about Resident Evil because I usually don't talk about anything else, so why should I now? So first off, I want to talk about the great presentation. I don't think I have to talk extensively about how great the graphics and sound design are, especially because I already talked about that one video ago. More interestingly, especially because we are trying to appreciate the engine here, is the amazing optimization. Many modern games run like with disappointing performance even on high-end computers. But that ain't the case with the IE engine. There aren't really any annoying microstutter, ridiculous VRAM requirements, crazy CPU bottlenecks, or poor utilization of the hardware. The games usually just run great and hardly with any problems. To be honest, it's not all perfect, considering the poor DX12 implementations in Resident Evil 2 and 3, the not so pretty ray tracing, and non-existing upscaling support besides old FSR solutions. And although that sounded pretty damn negative right now, none of these are as much of a problem as what you experience in other games. It's also very remarkable that the system requirements barely increased since Resident Evil 7, at least if you disable ray tracing, fancy hairs and stuff like that, which is fair in my opinion. Resident Evil 7 and the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake recommend only a GTX 1060, while Village and the Resident Evil 4 remake recommend a 1070. So GPUs from 2016. Like I said, you need a bit more for ray tracing and stuff like that, but it's really not too bad and they run amazingly even on mid-tier GPUs like my precious RX 6700 XT. Especially when you look at other franchises like Call of Duty that look basically the same or sometimes even worse for the last 6 to 7 years, while needing more and more resources. Apart from that, the cutscenes look extremely good as well, and that's not only because of the stunning graphics, but also because of the amazing motion capture. To be honest, that is less special today, because there are plenty of games with great motion capture, but that doesn't make it any worse. Basically everything moves super realistic, and I doubt you will find a cutscene or an in-game moment where that's not the case. No matter if it's a combat, just running and looking around, or the cutscenes. Everything looks natural. Although I want to mention that Capcom is great in that aspect, since literally forever and even Dino Crisis 2 on the PS1 had motion captured cutscenes. But nonetheless, the presentation looks great, runs great, and is greatly natural. And you know what's great too? At least for me, if everyone who watches this video and most importantly enjoys it, subscribes. Because according to my analytics, a lot of you haven't. So feel free to do so if you want to support me. Thank you. Something that is probably less appreciated by most are the features and the support for features. But I want to start with just the features and, to be more precise, the info next to the graphics options that show you what that setting does and how it impacts the visuals and performance. It's a small thing and sometimes I don't see a difference, but it's insanely helpful, especially when you don't know what you're doing. But in general, the whole options menu is done really well and gets better with every entry. There are literally options for everything, no matter language, HUD, accessibility, controls, the camera and more. And the best part is that they tell and show you what every single option does. The options menu of the Resident Evil 4 remake is probably my favorite options menu of any game. But to be honest, that's also the first time I thought about this. Anyway, not necessarily something unique for the IE engine, but Capcom also added plenty of additional quality of life improvements since its introduction. Like good autosaves, probably the best way to skip and pause cutscenes, and objective tabs that give you a hint of what to do. And now the support for features. But what do I even mean with that? Firstly, the support for plenty of completely different devices. Apart from just the current consoles and PC, and that's not even really the standard, there's also support for the old consoles and smartphones and VR. And we are talking about the exact same game. In the 2000s there were games with several completely different versions of the same game. Like the Harry Potter games that had like 6 complete unique versions every single time. But also stuff like the OG Resident Evil 4 that had an Android port that is kinda similar but also not really comparable. Just kidding, of course it's the definitive version of Resident Evil 4, and everyone who says otherwise has no idea. But coming back to today, we literally have the exact same Resident Evil 4 remake on everything, apart from Android. My condolences guys. Apart from the usual PC and console version, there's also the somewhat recent iPhone port, and also a complete VR version for Sony's PS VR 2. And they also did all this for Village, so it's not just a single special case. I think it's just very impressive how scalable and adaptable the IE engine is, and it's surely one of its greatest benefits. The next thing on my list is the mod support. And to be honest, it's pretty compared to the original games, but still decent and actually quite good compared to other modern games, especially because they allow for more than just cosmetics. I mean, there are also plenty of that, especially ones with slightly less clothes, which are of course just there to improve the performance even more. Every IE engine game has a trainer, so a program that lets you basically change everything from swapping the character model, invincibility, infinite ammo, changeable movement speed, teleporting, wall hacks, and so much more. Apart from that, there are also randomizer mods for every game apart from Resident Evil 7 that randomize the items that you pick up, and they are not as crazy as Spyro for the first 3 games, but still pretty damn fun and easily one of the best mods available. But that's not all. There are also super cool mods to change the perspective. All remakes receive first person mods that work and look great, and although I prefer the third person for those games, it's really cool to try out for a playthrough. At the same time, there's also a third person mod for Resident Evil 7 that is really cool as well, and especially something for those that have problems with first person games. Well, and Village got both anyway. But the fixed camera angle mod for the Resident Evil 2 remake is even cooler, and I waited for something like that for literally years. And the VR mods are amazing as well, that not only allow PC players to play the Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 remake in VR, but also to play the PS VR exclusives on PC. I think it's clear that the IE engine has some decent mod support and that there are some very cool things possible. We also kinda came full circle, more or less, because that also shows just how adaptable the engine is to support so much different perspectives. Well, and coming to my last point, the efficiency. And that affects us players not directly, but allows Capcom to make and release these games in a crazy short time. Just for Resident Evil we've got 5 different games in just 7 years, and then there are also plenty of other Capcom games that release in that time frame, like Devil May Cry 5, Street Fighter 6 and Monster Hunter Rise. I would argue Capcom always had a pretty decent output, but considering that most of those games are great as well, and that games take way longer to produce than 20 years ago, it's a very impressive feat, and the IE engine definitely plays a role in this. I mean, in the end they specifically made it to be more efficient during the development of Resident Evil 7. And they continue to expand it with every new game to be even better and even more efficient. And with that, we come to the end of the video. What do you think of the IE engine, and what is your favorite game developed with it? Let me know in the comments. Also please subscribe, share and like as well if you enjoyed this video. Thank you and see you next time.